girls, our next project we are going to be doing printmaking, and we are making snowflakes.
You will use blue paper and white paint that you are going to take your objects. You will be dipping them in paint to then print them onto the paper. When we are making our snowflakes today, you are using geometric shapes. So that means you're using triangles, ovals, squares. You'll use lines that can create other shapes like rectangles or squares. You have many different objects that make these geometric shapes. We know that geometric shapes are math shapes, shapes that have names, rules, and a certain number of sides. Like a triangle has 3 sides, square has 4 sides, okay? So today we are printmaking to create a snowflake with geometric shapes. When you begin, you'll have a bin full of different geometric shapes that you can use to print. And we are going to be making a symmetrical snowflake. So we're going to start in the middle. You're going to take an object and you have a plate that has paint on it, and you gently dip your object into the paint. You don't want to push really hard into the paint, just be very gentle. Any extra paint you might kind of dab off on the edge of the paper. You can keep your paper on the table when you're doing this, when you're printing. And then I'm going to start in the middle of my paper with this circle, which is a geometric shape. I'm going to press it down. You want to use pressure, and sometimes you might even twist it a little bit to make sure it prints. And we know that printmaking is making a copy of an object. So now I've made a copy of my circle onto my paper. And whenever I am done using a material, I'm going to wipe it off, wipe any extra paint off, and then put it back into my container pointing up so that the paint is pointing up. So I'm done with that one. Now I'm going to choose another geometric shape. I'm going to choose a square. I'll dip it into my paint. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create symmetry. So we start in the middle, and now I've dipped into the paint, but that's a lot of paint on this square. So I'm going to wipe a little bit off. Now I'm going to put this square into my corner here. I'm going to press hard. I might even use my fingers to press down onto my square, and I'm making a copy of that. I'm going to do this 4 times so that I have a symmetrical snowflake where I'm copying this. Now I can usually do something 2 times before I have to get more paint. So now I'm going to dip back into my paint, making sure sometimes you need to rub it around and then get the extra paint off. So I'm going into all 4 of my corners so that it's all the same and symmetrical. Symmetry means same. So I'm going into those 4 corners to make this symmetrical snowflake. So there is my next piece. Now again, if you have a lot of paint left on it, hopefully you printed most of it onto your paper. If you have a lot of paint on it, you can wipe a little bit off, and then you want it pointing up and down back in your container. It's very important that we take care of these materials because many classes will use these stamps, and we don't want them to be full of paint. We don't want this whole container to be a mess. So you really want to take your time and be thoughtful about when you put these materials back into the bin, and you want to be thoughtful about what you are printing onto your paper to create this symmetrical triangle. When I take my popsicle sticks, I can use the side of it, so I can grip this side so my fingers don't get too messy. And then you kind of just slide it into the paint so that it covers it. And this might kind of make my line that will connect all the parts of my snowflake. And notice how I could print almost 4 times. I maybe need to redo that one without dipping back into the paint. So you don't need to dip into the paint every single time. If you need to, you can kind of slide it to make sure that it prints and makes a copy of that. So that could be like the shape of a triangle or a line to kind of connect all the parts of our snowflake. And my fingers didn't get too messy doing that. As long as you're careful and you're not pushing really hard into the paint, you shouldn't be too full of paint. So I put that back very carefully. And then I'll continue to print with other geometric shapes and creating symmetry. So I'll be repeating the same shapes usually about 4 times. And again, if I get too much paint, wipe it off a little bit. repeat that print. There's 2, 3, and it looks like I'm kind of dry on paint, so I might get just a touch more for this last print. And 4. Your paper does not have to be full. It's nice to have some areas where you can see the blue here, so that you can tell that this is your printmaking snowflake. Just make sure that you're taking care of the materials, pointing them back up, and being very neat as you choose each material for your snowflake. And there you have it. There is your printmaking snowflake made out of geometric shapes. Make sure you get this put on the correct part of the drying rack when you are all done. Get your table cleaned off, throw away paper towels, wash your hands, and make sure your bin is nice and neat for the next class to use. Awesome work.
All right, that's all you need to know to make your snowflakes and do some of your first printmaking using geometric shapes. Good luck!